My brothers kept me trapped for years, treating me like a thing. They thought I'd never fight back. They were wrong. I remember the sound before anything else, the sound of the lock clicking behind me. It wasn't loud, but it carried a finality that echoed through the small, dark room like a scream. The air smelled of dust and cold metal, the faint scent of the old wooden floor mixing with the dampness of forgotten years. I was 16, barefoot, wearing a dress torn at the shoulder, my skin marked by bruises that told stories I had never dared to speak. My brother's footsteps faded down the hall, and then there was only silence, thick, suffocating, endless silence. That was the day I realized I wasn't living anymore. I was surviving. They said it was for my own good, that I needed discipline, that I was different, ungrateful, strange. But the truth was simpler and darker. They couldn't control what they didn't understand. I had dreams that didn't fit inside the small world they had built, and every time I spoke of them, they looked at me with the same cold disgust, as if my words were a disease. So they decided to cage me, to make me obedient, to make me forget that I was human. The first night, I cried until my throat burned. The second night, I stopped crying. By the third, I learned the rhythm of the creaking pipes above me, the whisper of rats behind the walls, the way the moonlight slipped through the cracks like a secret only I could see. I counted the hours by how many times I heard the wind push against the old windows. Sometimes, when the silence became unbearable, I would whisper to myself, "You are real. You are still here," because if I stopped saying it, I feared I might disappear completely. My brothers weren't monsters, at least not in the way people imagine monsters to be. They smiled in public, helped neighbors, went to church every Sunday, and everyone loved them. No one would believe that behind those polite smiles lived cruelty so calculated it almost felt practiced. They knew exactly how far they could go without leaving marks that would make others question. Words became their favorite weapon, words that sliced deeper than any blade. "You should be grateful we keep you here," they would say. "No one else would ever want you," and the worst part, for a long time, I believed them. I believed that maybe I deserved to be locked away, that my existence was a burden, that silence was safer than defiance. But deep inside me, under all the fear and shame, something small and fierce kept burning, a spark that refused to die. Then came the night that changed everything, the night I stopped being silent. I don't remember the exact date, only the way the air felt, thick, electric, as if the world itself was holding its breath. They had left me there again, locked away, the sound of their laughter echoing from the other side of the wall. My hands shook, my heart pounded so hard I could feel it in my throat, and for the first time, I realized that if I didn't act now, I would never see the world beyond that room again. I pressed my palms against the cold door and whispered, "Enough." And in that single word, I found something I had lost long ago, myself. That night, I made a choice that would change everything. It didn't start with the lock. It started with words. Small, quiet, poisonous words that sounded like care but dripped with control. I was 9 when the first seed of fear was planted. "You can't go outside alone," my brother Daniel said. "The world isn't safe for girls like you." I believed him. Then came the rules: no talking to neighbors, no reading certain books, no sitting by the window after sunset. Every time I asked why, they said it was because they loved me. Love, that was the word they used to build my prison. At first, I didn't see the bars forming around me. The house was big, old, always cold no matter how many blankets I wrapped around myself. My brothers worked during the day, and I stayed home, cleaning, cooking, doing everything they asked. I thought that was normal, that it was my duty. They would bring guests sometimes, people who smiled politely at me, never asking questions. And when I spoke too much, Daniel would place his hand on my shoulder, smile, and say, "Quiet now. You talk too much." Every word felt like a chain tightening around my throat. By the time I turned 12, I had stopped going to school. They told me the teachers said I wasn't learning fast enough, that it was better if I stayed home, where they could help me. I remember watching the other children walk past our gate in the morning, laughing, backpacks bouncing, sunlight catching their hair. I used to press my face against the window and imagine what their lives must feel like. Freedom had a sound, the sound of laughter carried by the wind. The walls began to close in slowly. They started locking my door for safety, at first only at night, then for hours during the day. "You sleep too much," they said. "You're lazy." I wanted to scream that I wasn't, that I was just tired of being told I wasn't enough. But I kept quiet. Because every time I tried to defend myself, Daniel's expression turned cold, and my other brother, Matthew, would remind me of what happened to girls who disobeyed their family. They used fear like artists, painting it carefully into every part of my life. Then came the day that changed everything. I was 14, standing in the kitchen when Daniel came home early. He looked tired, angry. Something in the air shifted. He slammed his coat on the table and said, "You've been talking to the neighbor again." My stomach dropped. I hadn't, but before I could explain, his hand came down on the counter beside me, loud, final. "Do you want people to think we can't take care of you? Do you want to shame this family?" I shook my head, tears burning my eyes. "Then learn your place," he said, his voice calm but sharp as glass. That night was the first time they locked the door from the outside and left it that way until morning. Days turned into weeks, weeks into years. Time stopped meaning anything. The seasons changed through the small window, rain, snow, sunlight, but inside that room, it was always the same, silence, shadows, and the quiet hum of my thoughts trying not to collapse in on themselves. I used to dream of running away, but I didn't even know where to go. The world outside felt like a story I wasn't allowed to be part of. And yet, every night, I whispered to myself the same words, "They can't own your soul." I didn't know where I had learned that sentence, but it became my secret prayer. I repeated it until it sounded like a heartbeat. I needed to believe that somewhere deep inside me, a piece of me still belonged to me. But one day, I overheard something that shattered even that small hope. A conversation between my brothers. My name. My future. A plan that made my blood run cold. It was the day I realized they didn't just want to control me, they wanted to erase me. That was the day I decided I would never let them win. It was late, maybe past midnight. The air outside was heavy with rain, and thunder rolled softly in the distance like a warning. I couldn't sleep, not that I ever really did anymore. The light from the hallway slipped through the crack under my door, thin and trembling. That's when I heard their voices. Daniel's tone was low, urgent. Matthew's sounded colder, measured, like someone trying to stay calm while hiding something monstrous. I pressed my ear against the door. "She's getting older," Daniel said. "We can't keep her hidden forever," Matthew sighed. "Then we'll have to make a decision. Either she learns her place, or she disappears." My blood turned to ice. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. The word disappears echoed in my head over and over until it didn't even sound like a word anymore, just a dark hum of finality. I felt my whole body tremble as if my bones understood something my mind wasn't ready to face. They weren't protecting me. They weren't keeping me safe. They were preparing to erase me. I stepped back, my heel hitting the wall behind me, and the faint sound made Daniel pause mid-sentence. Silence. Then footsteps, slow, deliberate, coming closer. My heart pounded so loud I thought they could hear it through the door. The handle moved slightly but then stopped. "She's asleep," Matthew whispered. "We'll deal with it tomorrow." The lock clicked again, sealing my fate for one more night. That night, I didn't sleep at all. I sat on the cold floor, staring at the shadows moving across the ceiling. My mind raced through memories, moments that suddenly made sense. The letters I was never allowed to open. The photographs that disappeared. The way my name was never mentioned when visitors came. I wasn't just being controlled. I was being erased piece by piece, like someone cutting me out of my own life. I remembered my mother's face, or what little I could recall. She had died when I was young, or at least that's what Daniel told me. But there were no pictures, no grave, no proof. Just a single locket I had once found in an old drawer, with her name scratched on the back. I had kept it hidden, afraid they'd take it away. That night, I pulled it out again, the metal cold against my skin, and whispered, "If you're out there, please, help me." The next morning, Daniel came into the room. He was calm to calm. "You're quiet today," he said, sitting on the edge of the bed. His smile was soft, but his eyes were sharp. "You know we only want what's best for you, right?" I nodded, keeping my hands still on my lap, even though they were shaking. He reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. "Good girl," he said. That phrase, "good girl," had become a curse. It meant obedience. It meant surrender. It meant survival. After he left, I sat there for hours, trying to piece together a plan. But how does a caged bird learn to fly when it's never seen the sky? I didn't know where to start. I had no money, no friends, no one who even knew I existed anymore. Still, something inside me refused to die, that same small spark that had survived years of silence. I began to listen more carefully, memorizing their routines, the creak of every floorboard, the time the hallway lights went out. I started saving small things, a bent nail, a shard of glass, an old key I found near the basement door. I didn't know what I would do with them, but they were mine, and that alone was a rebellion. Weeks passed, and the tension in the house grew thicker, like the air before a storm. They whispered more often, locked more doors, watched me closer. I knew they sensed something had changed in me, they just didn't know what. And then one morning, as I washed dishes, I heard Daniel talking on the phone. His voice was low, urgent again. "She's not ready yet," he said. "Give me one more week." My stomach twisted. One more week for what? That's when I knew I was out of time. Whatever they were planning, it would happen soon. And if I didn't escape before that day came, there would be no after. That night, I made myself a promise I would not let them decide how my story ended. The next days felt like years. Every breath I took was a calculation, every movement rehearsed. I pretended to be obedient, quiet, calm, broken. That was my disguise. The less they suspected, the more time I had. Every morning, I swept the floor of that cold, hollow house, memorizing the rhythm of Daniel's footsteps, the way the front door lock turned, the exact moment Matthew left for work. The house creaked with secrets, and I was finally learning its language. I began to hide food, pieces of bread, apples, anything small enough to fit into the loose brick behind the bed. It wasn't much, but it was a start. I found a thin metal rod under the sink, maybe part of an old curtain rod. I filed its end against the concrete floor night after night, until it became sharp enough to slip into the lock on my door. The sound of metal scraping stone was almost unbearable, but it was the sound of hope, and I clung to it like oxygen. At night, I would sit by the window, staring at the stars, wondering if my mother had ever looked at the same sky. I used to believe that she'd abandoned me, but after hearing my brothers speak that night, I wasn't so sure anymore. I thought about the way Daniel's jaw tightened whenever her name was mentioned, the way Matthew avoided my questions. There was something there, something they had hidden from me, something that made my blood feel like ice every time I thought about it. One afternoon, I caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror, thin, pale, eyes sunken, hair tangled. For a moment, I didn't recognize the girl staring back. She looked older than 16, older than time itself. I touched the glass and whispered, "You will get out. You will see the sun again," and for the first time, the reflection didn't look hopeless. It looked angry, alive. That night, while they were asleep, I tested the metal rod on the lock. My hands trembled so badly I almost dropped it. I turned it slowly, listening to the faint click, the way the tumblers shifted. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, snap, the lock gave way. I froze, the sound echoing in my chest like a gunshot. I didn't open the door yet. Not that night. I just needed to know it could be done. I needed to feel that freedom wasn't just a dream. The next day, Daniel noticed something. "You've been quiet lately," he said, handing me a bowl of soup. I forced a smile. "I'm just tired." He studied me for a moment too long, then nodded. But in his eyes I saw suspicion, small, sharp, deadly. He didn't know what I was planning, but he could feel it. And that terrified me more than anything. That night, the rain returned. Heavy, relentless, washing against the windows like the sky itself was begging me to run. I sat there, heart pounding, hand on the metal rod, staring at the door. The house was silent except for the storm. My body shook, but my mind was clear. This was it. The moment I had been preparing for. I whispered to myself, "You only live if you run." Then I turned the lock. The door creaked open. The hallway was darker than I remembered, shadows stretching like arms waiting to pull me back. I moved silently, every step a battle between fear and freedom. The floorboards groaned under my feet, too loud. I stopped, holding my breath. From somewhere down the hall, Daniel shifted in his sleep. I waited. 1 second, 2, then another silence. I took another step, then another. The air felt different, alive, electric. I was halfway down the stairs when lightning struck outside, illuminating the house for a single, blinding instant. And that's when I saw it, Daniel standing at the end of the hallway, watching me. His voice was calm, almost gentle. "Where do you think you're going?" The world stopped. My blood froze. I couldn't breathe. And in that moment, I knew freedom was never going to be easy. It had to be fought for. The storm outside was nothing compared to the one raging inside me. Lightning cracked across the sky, flashing against Daniel's face. For a moment, he didn't look human, his features warped by shadows and anger. The silence between us was suffocating. My heart pounded so loudly I was afraid he could hear it. I clutched the metal rod behind my back, my fingers slick with sweat. "Go back to your room," he said softly, almost tenderly. But his tone carried something deeper, the kind of calm that only hides fury. I didn't move. I said go back. His voice was sharper now, slicing through the thunder. I took a step backward, my bare foot brushing against the cold wooden stair. He stepped closer, slow and deliberate, his shadow swallowing mine. "You don't understand," he said. "You're not ready for the world out there. It'll destroy you." I almost laughed, a dry, broken sound. "You already did," I whispered. His eyes flickered with something, surprise, maybe, or realization. "You ungrateful," he began, but before he could finish, I turned and ran. The hallway exploded into motion. I didn't think, I just moved. My feet pounded the floor, my lungs burned, my pulse screamed in my ears. I could hear him behind me, his footsteps heavy, furious, closing in. I reached the front door and shoved the metal rod into the lock, twisting, praying. It wouldn't move. My hands shook uncontrollably. "Don't make this harder than it has to be," he shouted. The sound of his voice was too close, too real. The lock finally gave way, the door creaked open, and then a hand grabbed my wrist. When I finally snapped, it wasn't mercy they saw in my eyes, it was everything they'd made me become. Daniel's grip was iron, digging into my skin. "You don't get to leave," he hissed. His breath was hot against my ear, and something inside me snapped. For years I had begged, pleaded, cried. I had been silent, obedient, broken, but not anymore. I spun around, shoving the metal rod between us, and for the first time in my life, he stepped back. His eyes widened, not in pain, but in disbelief. "You're hurting me," he said, as if the concept was foreign to him. "Good," I whispered. For a moment, everything froze, time, sound, even the rain outside. Then I ran again, this time faster, harder. The cold night air hit my face like knives, and for the first time in years, I felt it, freedom. The gravel cut my feet as I sprinted down the path, the wind tearing through my hair, my lungs screaming for air. Behind me, Daniel's voice called my name, not in anger now, but something else, fear. Maybe he realized I wasn't coming back. The world beyond the gate was vast and terrifying. The rain poured harder, blurring everything into a haze of grey and silver. I didn't know where to go, but I didn't care. Every step away from that house was a victory. Every breath outside those walls was a rebellion. My body was trembling, my heart racing, but I kept whispering to myself, keep going, don't stop. I didn't stop until the house was nothing but a faint shadow in the distance, swallowed by the storm. I collapsed by the side of an empty road, gasping, crying, laughing all at once. I had escaped, but as I looked back, I realized something terrifying. I had no one, no money, no place to go. No proof of what had been done to me. And yet, for the first time, the emptiness didn't feel hopeless. It felt alive, because even though the world ahead was unknown, it was mine now. Mine to walk, to fight for, to survive. Still, deep inside, I knew Daniel wouldn't let it end there. Men like him never do. And that fear would come true sooner than I ever imagined. The night I escaped, I thought freedom would feel like peace. But freedom, I learned, can also feel like hunger, exhaustion, and fear. By morning, the rain had stopped, leaving the world grey and heavy with silence. I walked for hours, barefoot, the ground cutting into my skin until each step burned. My thin dress clung to me, soaked and cold. Every sound, the crack of branches, the distant hum of a car, made my body tense. I didn't know where I was, only that I could never turn back. By the time I reached the small town miles away, my legs barely worked. The first person I saw was a woman sweeping her porch, her expression soft but wary as she watched me approach. "Please," I said, my voice barely more than a whisper. "I need help." She hesitated. Her eyes scanned me, the bruises, the dirt, the trembling hands, and for a second, I thought she might take me in. But then her gaze hardened, like a curtain closing. "I don't want trouble," she said, turning away. The sound of her door locking was louder than thunder. That was the first time I realized that sometimes the world doesn't save broken girls, it looks the other way. I spent the next 2 days sleeping in abandoned sheds, surviving on rainwater and scraps from trash bins behind diners. Every shadow looked like Daniel. Every passing car made my heart race. I started to wonder if freedom was just another kind of prison, one where the walls were invisible, but the fear was the same. Then, one morning, I saw a flyer taped to a bus stop, "Missing person runaway girl, 17 years old." My name, my face. The picture was old, but the eyes were unmistakably mine. My stomach dropped. They had reported me missing, not as a victim, but as a runaway. The note said, "If found, please contact her brothers, Daniel and Matthew." Their numbers were printed clearly, neat and respectable. I tore the paper down, crumpling it in my fist, but I knew there were dozens more across town. I wasn't free. I was being hunted. That day, I went to the police. I thought maybe, someone would believe me. I told them everything from the locked rooms to the threats to the night I ran for my life. The officer listened in silence, his pen scratching the paper. When I finished, he sighed. "You said your brothers took care of you after your parents died." I nodded. "Then maybe they were just being protective," he said. "It's not uncommon for families to have disagreements." My throat tightened. They locked me in a room, I whispered. For years, he didn't look up. "We'll talk to them," he said. "But you should stay where they can find you." I walked out of the station in silence. My reflection in the glass door looked smaller than ever. That's when I understood my brothers didn't just steal my freedom. They had stolen my truth. They had turned my story into a lie that the world believed. I found a park that night and sat on a bench until the streetlights flickered off one by one. The air smelled of wet grass and diesel. I thought about my mother again, the locket, her face, her voice that I couldn't remember anymore. "What would you do?" I asked the darkness. No answer came, but the wind picked up slightly, brushing against my face like a whisper, "Keep running." So I did, for weeks. From town to town, train to train, always looking over my shoulder. Sometimes I dreamed of Daniel's voice calling my name, sometimes gentle, sometimes furious. Sometimes I woke up convinced he was standing right behind me, but I never stopped. Because stopping meant being found, and being found meant disappearing for real this time. Still, there was one question that haunted me every night: what if my mother was still alive? And that question, that fragile, impossible hope, became the spark that would lead me to the truth they had tried so hard to bury. The idea that my mother might still be alive started as a whisper, small, fragile, almost foolish. But when you've lost everything, hope becomes a kind of survival. One night, while hiding behind an old diner near the edge of another small town, I went through my few possessions again: the torn dress, the bruised skin, the locket. That locket had always been my only connection to her, and I'd never dared to open it before. Maybe I was afraid of what I wouldn't find inside. But this time, my fingers trembled as I pressed the clasp, and it finally clicked open with a soft metallic sigh. Inside, there wasn't a picture, just a folded piece of paper, so thin and yellowed it looked like it could crumble at any second. I unfolded it carefully. The handwriting was delicate but rushed. It said only a few words: "If you ever feel lost, find the truth in Willow Creek." My breath caught in my chest. Willow Creek, I didn't know what it was. A town, a place, a memory? But it felt like a direction, a purpose. For the first time in years, I had something to follow other than fear. I found a map at a gas station, and there it was, Willow Creek, a small rural town about 80 miles away. I didn't have money for a bus ticket, so I walked. Days turned into weeks. My feet bled, my stomach growled, my body begged me to stop, but my mind kept repeating the words from the note like a mantra: "Find the truth." Every mile was agony, but every step felt like a piece of myself returning. When I finally reached Willow Creek, it was smaller than I imagined. Just a few houses, a church, a library that looked abandoned. I asked around about my mother's name. Most people just shook their heads. But one old woman, sitting outside a grocery store, froze when I said it. "You said her name was Margaret?" she asked. Her voice trembled. You look like her." My heart stopped. "You knew her?" The woman nodded slowly. "She used to come here, years ago. She was looking for her daughter." I felt the world tilt beneath me. "What happened to her?" I asked. The woman looked away, her eyes clouding with something like guilt. "Your brothers came looking for her not long after. She disappeared after that." My stomach twisted. "Disappeared," I repeated. She nodded. "No one ever saw her again." The words hit like a knife. My legs almost gave out, but I forced myself to stand. I thanked her and walked away, but my mind was spinning. If my mother had been alive, if she had been searching for me, then Daniel and Matthew had lied about everything. They hadn't just locked me away to control me. They had locked me away so my mother couldn't find me. That night, I broke into the old library. The windows were cracked, and the smell of dust filled the air. I went through old newspapers, records, anything that could tell me more. Hours passed before I found it, a small article, barely more than a paragraph, dated 16 years ago. Local woman, Margaret Harlow, reported missing after searching for her estranged daughter. Last seen near the property of her late husband's family. The property of her husband's family. My father's side. My brother's. The house I had escaped from. I dropped the paper, my hands shaking uncontrollably. My chest felt tight, my heart pounding so hard it hurt. All this time, they hadn't been protecting me from the world, they'd been protecting themselves from the truth. My mother had found out what they were doing to me, and they had silenced her. The rain began to fall again outside, soft and steady, tapping against the glass like a heartbeat. I stared into the darkness and whispered, "I'm going to finish what she started." That night, I decided to go back. Not to beg, not to run, but to uncover every lie they had built, and to make them finally face what they'd done. I didn't know if I'd survive it, but for the first time, I didn't care, because the truth was worth dying for. The road back to that house felt like walking through a graveyard made of memories. Every tree, every turn, every patch of cracked asphalt whispered my name like ghosts of my own past. It had been 14 years since I'd seen the place, 14 years since I'd run barefoot through the forest, blood soaking the ground beneath me. But the moment I reached the old iron gate, I knew I had never truly left. The air was thick with rot and silence, the same suffocating silence that had swallowed my childhood whole. The house stood exactly as I remembered, the peeling white paint, the broken shutters, the porch sagging like it carried too much guilt. Only now it felt smaller, or maybe I had finally grown beyond its prison walls. I didn't knock. The door creaked open under my hand, and the sound cut through the air like a scream. Inside, the air was stale, filled with dust and something else, fear. My heart pounded as I stepped across the threshold. Every board creaked beneath my weight, echoing through the halls like a heartbeat I once tried to silence. I moved through the rooms slowly, my flashlight cutting through the darkness, landing on fragments of my old life. The cracked mirror in the hallway still reflected the same warped face I remembered as a girl, the one they made me believe was unworthy of love. I whispered, "You're still here," not to the house, but to the child I had been, trapped in those walls. Voices echoed from the kitchen, low, familiar, unmistakable. Daniel and Matthew. My breath caught. For a moment, I froze. But then something inside me, something buried deep for years, broke free. I walked toward the sound, my step steady, my fear replaced by an icy calm. When they saw me, their faces went pale. "You," Daniel whispered, as if I were a ghost. "You were supposed to be dead." I felt a strange satisfaction in his words. "You tried to make me," I said softly. "But you failed." Matthew stood, his voice shaking. "You shouldn't have come back." I looked him in the eye and said, "I came for the truth." I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out the folded newspaper article. "You lied to me. About her. About everything." Daniel's jaw tightened. "You don't understand." I cut him off. "No, you don't understand. She was alive. She was looking for me. And you," my voice cracked, but I forced the words out. "You made her disappear." The silence that followed was unbearable, the kind that feels like it's crushing your lungs. Finally, Daniel spoke, his voice cold, empty. "She was going to destroy everything. She wanted to take you away. We couldn't let her." My hands trembled. "You couldn't let her. She was my mother." His expression didn't change. "She was weak. She would have ruined us." My throat burned with rage. "You already did that." The storm outside began to rage, thunder shaking the walls. Rain hit the windows like fists. The whole house seemed to come alive with the sound of the past breaking through. I looked at them, my brothers, and realized something terrifying. They didn't regret what they'd done. They believed it was right. That twisted belief was their only truth. Matthew tried to step closer, his hand out like he was soothing a wild animal. "Let it go, Lily," he said softly. "You survived. That should be enough." I took a step back, shaking my head. "It's not enough," I whispered. "Not anymore." I looked at the old fireplace behind them, the same one they had locked me beside for hours as a child. My gaze drifted to the wooden mantel, where the family Bible still sat, the symbol of their false purity. Slowly, I picked it up, feeling the weight of all their sins in my hands. "You used this," I said, "to justify everything. To hurt me. To erase her, I threw it to the floor. The sound echoed like thunder. Daniel flinched. Matthew looked away. I turned toward the door, my heart pounding, my breath unsteady. "You can keep your lies," I said, my voice trembling but steady. "But you'll never have my silence again." As I stepped outside, the wind tore through the trees, carrying the scent of rain and freedom. Behind me, the house stood in darkness, a monument to everything I had survived. I didn't look back, not once. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't running from that place. I was walking away from it, forever. But deep down, I knew it wasn't over yet. I could feel it in my bones. There was still one truth left buried, one final secret that would change everything I thought I knew about my family and about myself. I thought I had finally escaped the weight of that house, but some ghosts don't live in places, they live inside you. The following days felt unreal. I stayed in a small motel on the edge of town, the kind with flickering neon lights and the smell of old smoke that never quite leaves the walls. Sleep wouldn't come. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard Daniel's voice, calm and cruel. She was weak. She would have ruined us. Those words sank deep into my mind, wrapping around my thoughts like barbed wire. But then, on the third night, something happened that pulled me back into the darkness I thought I had left behind. A letter slid under my motel door. No name, no return address. Just my name written in shaky handwriting that felt hauntingly familiar. I hesitated before opening it, my hands trembling. Inside was a single photograph, black and white, worn at the edges. It showed a woman standing in front of the house, holding a little girl. Me. And behind her, almost hidden in the shadows, was a man I didn't recognize. On the back of the photo, written in faded ink, were 3 words: "He wasn't your brother." The room seemed to tilt. My breath caught in my chest. I turned the photo over again, staring at that man's face. His eyes, I knew those eyes. They were the same cold grey as Daniel's. My stomach twisted. My thoughts raced backward through the years, through the screams, the punishments, the strange protectiveness Daniel had always shown me, the way he would stare at me, not like a brother, but like something else entirely. I felt sick. The world began to crumble around me. I needed answers, no matter how much they would hurt. So I went back, not to the house, but to the small-town library where my mother used to work before she disappeared. The air was heavy with the smell of old paper and forgotten years. The librarian, a woman with kind eyes and silver hair, remembered her. "Your mother used to come here every Sunday," she said softly. "Always with that little girl, you. She said she was saving money to move away." I swallowed hard. "Did she ever mention Daniel?" The woman frowned. "Daniel," she hesitated. "He wasn't her son, was he?" That one sentence shattered what was left of my world. "What did you say?" I whispered. She looked at me, confused. "Everyone in town knew. He wasn't your mother's child. He belonged to the man she worked for, your father's employer. A cruel man. People said he was violent. Your mother took both of you in after something happened." My throat closed up. "After what?" Her eyes softened. "After he died. And they said the boy never forgave her for it." It all made sense now. The hatred, the control, the way Daniel treated me not as a sister, but as something he needed to punish. I left the library shaking, my vision blurred by tears I hadn't realized were falling. My mother hadn't abandoned me. She had tried to protect me from him. And for that, she had paid the price. I drove back to the woods behind the house, the place where she used to take me to hide when things got bad. The trees whispered in the wind, the ground soft beneath my feet. I found the old bench where we used to sit, the one carved with her initials. I knelt beside it and let the tears come. "You tried to save me," I whispered into the cold air. "And they took you for it." As the sun began to rise, light filtered through the trees like shards of gold, breaking through the darkness that had followed me for decades. For the first time, I didn't feel fear. I felt grief, pure, clean grief. And beneath it, something even stronger, resolve. Daniel's lies had shaped my life, but they wouldn't define my ending. I reached into my pocket and took out the photograph. The man's eyes stared back at me, the man who had destroyed everything. I tore the photo in half, letting the pieces scatter in the wind. That was the moment I understood what it meant to take back my life. Forgiveness wasn't for them. It was for me, for the girl they broke, for the woman who refused to stay broken. But I also knew there was still one more step left, one last truth I needed to confront before I could truly be free. Because Daniel's final words before I walked away still echoed in my mind. You don't know everything, Lily. You were never supposed to. And deep down, I could feel it. The final revelation waiting in the dark, the one that would change everything I thought I knew about my family, my past, and myself. I knew I couldn't run anymore. Not from Daniel, not from the past, not from the shadow of my mother's disappearance that had haunted me all these years. The last piece of the puzzle waited at the old family estate, the place I had escaped from, the place where the lies were born. I returned at dawn, the sky painted with streaks of fire orange and pale gold, the air sharp with cold. Each step toward the house felt heavier than the last, like walking through water, but I couldn't stop. I had to know the truth. I had to see it for myself. The house was quiet, almost eerily so. I slipped through the broken gate, past the overgrown garden, and into the hallways I once called home. Memories rushed at me, Daniel's glare, Matthew's silences, the suffocating air of the locked rooms. Every step echoed, every shadow stretched longer than reality. And then I saw it, a door I had never dared enter as a child. The door to the attic. Daniel and Matthew had always forbidden it, saying it was dangerous, saying it was nothing for me to worry about. But something in me knew it held the final truth. I climbed the stairs, each creaking board sounding like a countdown to revelation. My hands trembled as I turned the doorknob. Inside, dust motes floated in the shafts of morning light. And then I saw it, a trunk, old and battered, locked with a rusted clasp. My pulse thundered in my ears as I forced it open. Inside were letters, photographs, and documents I wasn't supposed to see. Documents that revealed what Daniel and Matthew had tried to bury. My mother had discovered the abuse before I had escaped. She had confronted Daniel, demanded he release me, tried to protect me. But Daniel, consumed by rage and twisted loyalty to his hidden agenda, had silenced her, claiming she had abandoned me. Tears blurred my vision as I read her words, letters she had written for me, letters I never received. My darling Lily, one began, I will find you one day, no matter the darkness that surrounds us. Remember, you are stronger than they will ever believe. The pain in her handwriting was palpable, a mix of fear, love, and desperation. I pressed the letters to my chest, sobbing, finally allowing myself to mourn the mother I had lost, the childhood stolen from me, and the betrayal that had shaped every year since. And then I understood the final, cruel twist. The man who had terrorized me, Daniel, was not just a brother by convenience. He had been placed there to control me, to manipulate my inheritance, to enforce the lies that kept my mother silent and my childhood stolen. Everything I had endured, every lock, every punishment, every whispered threat, had been orchestrated. The depth of his betrayal was unimaginable, but the realization brought clarity, not despair. I had survived. I had learned. I had found the pieces of my life they tried to destroy. I stepped outside, the morning sun washing over me. The wind caught the edges of the letters in my hands, lifting them like a promise. I didn't look back at the house or at the shadows of the brothers who had tried to break me. Instead, I walked toward the horizon, carrying my mother's words, my truth, and the power of my survival. I knew there would always be scars, memories that would ache, echoes of betrayal that would never fully fade. But I was free, not just from the house or from Daniel and Matthew, but from the silence that had been forced upon me. As I walked, I whispered into the wind, a vow for the girl I had once been. I will live. I will tell my story. I will honor you, Mother. And no one will ever take my voice again. And in that moment, the weight of years lifted, replaced by something fierce and untouchable, the knowledge that I was no longer a victim, but the author of my own life. The storm had ended. The sun rose. And for the first time in decades, I felt something I thought I would never feel again: hope.